Welcome to Taking Your Third Path, where courageous stories and hard-won wisdom guide us towards lives of intention, connection, and care.
Hi, everybody. On today's episode of Taking Your Third Path, we're talking to Mike Basta, and we'll be taking a deep dive into the idea of the secrets of taking the most enjoyable vacation and how this can be an opportunity for couples to learn some skills that will actually help them in many of others' life's challenges. So, welcome, Mike. I'm so glad you're here.
Good to be here.
So you got into the work you're doing, helping couples, a very interesting route. Tell us a little bit about how you got into that work.
Well, I was as working as a clinical social worker and working with families and families in crisis with teenagers in crisis, and what I found is that I was able to be really much more helpful if I could work with those parents. And a lot of times I found myself kicking these poor teenagers out of the room and getting them out of stressful conversations and then having conversations with those parents. And I learned that I developed a very strong interest in working with couples. And then I stumbled upon a guy named John Gottman and took training from him. And John Gottman, if people haven't heard about him, is really the preeminent researcher on couples relationships from up at University of Washington. And so I became a mentee of John, got certified in his approach, and have it's been a path of about 20 something years, I think, at this point of doing that particular work.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not the expert you are, but I think what's really impressive about the Gottman Institute is it's really focusing on something that Third Path believes deeply in is if you have couples working well together, they can solve so much. And when couples are not working well together, they can get into so much trouble.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so it's really in fact, at the heart of Third Path's work was the idea that there's not a lot in the workplace sometimes that's really supporting couples to think in creative ways around how to manage work and family responsibilities. They often push couples into decisions that aren't always the happiest decisions for the family system. And so, what your organization has really been doing is helping having couples learn how to have healthy
Yeah,
disagreements and get to better ideas. It sounds like.
exactly. Yeah,
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 yeah.
exactly.
Well, we're going to take a little look into vacations because what I love about taking vacations is you think it's just this simple thing where you're packing a bag and going off and having some fun. But really, you're unpacking all kinds of possibilities that are constraining your thinking. And so, one of the things we do when we're helping people think about vacations is to get a little bit more sophisticated about what could be impacting their ability to have an enjoyable vacation. And so, Mike and I are going to be talking about some of those factors today. And, one of them, for example, is how old are your kids and how that can impact someone's vacation. I don't know if you remember what it was like to take vacations with little ones versus taking vacations with older children.
Yeah. It is. It's a while ago, and I'm old enough to have grandkids now. And spend
That changes it again.
spend a day a week hanging out with little ones. So yeah, it's pretty much in front of mind. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's one of the things, just to begin with, to think a little bit about. I remember my husband taught me that when we were taking vacations with little ones, it was a vacation for the kids. And so what we would do then is actually create a separate experience where we would go away just for the weekend for just the two of us as a couple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have a luxury like that, where you're able to have trusted family or friends that can step in, I mean, it really is a luxury to have that. But totally in agreement. And I think without that, if we didn't have two grandparents that were able to have our backs, we would have been in a lot more hot water than we were eventually in.
Yeah. Although I think that another creative solution I've heard is two families taking vacations at the same time where the kids get along.
Yes.
And that also can create a little bit more playmates for your kids and a little bit of switching off to have some time just for the couple too. So again, we can start thinking creatively if we start saying, okay, we're taking a vacation with little ones. What does this mean? And how can we think differently about it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But another thing that can get in the way for couples is obviously their workplaces, you
mhm.
know? You might work for an organization where every single message from the top is you need to be available on vacation for your job.
Right.
I don't know if you experienced couples like that when you were helping couples.
Um, Not only helping couples, but I, I was that person. I was.
Tell us more. Tell us more.
Well, yeah. For a period of time, I think probably the heart of this was I was the director of a residential treatment center for boys, and that's just a hard thing to get away from. Everything from staff calling you about really serious kinds of behavioral things that could be going on to we can't find this or we can't find that. So there's always reasons for them to need you. And back in those days, this is a while ago, as I'm dating myself a bit with this, but that was back in the days of pagers. And I think that as a person that's there, with concerns about helping other people and being dedicated to work, having boundaries is really important. And I obviously struggled with that. And my I think there are two moments that really stand out for me. One was when I was at home, and I think I just finished reading a book to my daughter and had to go into the bathroom, and my pager fell into the toilet. And I said, "Oh my God, I dropped my pager in the toilet." And I realized that I was getting an applause from my entire family. So there was that. And then there was my 40th birthday when I thought I'm gonna do some self care here. So I'm gonna go to a chiropractor. And she said, "Well, you've got to get ready to get on the table, and you need to take things out of your pockets." And I realized I was carrying three pagers, so for different purposes. And she looked at me like, you're out of your mind. And that was the precursor to some changes. I can't say that I ever arrived exactly where everyone would want to be, but of some lifestyle changes, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what you're getting at is there's some internal stuff that might need to be looked at too.
Yeah.
When Mike and I were talking earlier, I was confessing that I grew up in a family where anytime you said, well, I've got work to do, it means you didn't have to show up for Thanksgiving, you didn't have to show up for Christmas. Like I came up from a family system where it was just so, work was so important that we all really organized our sense of self around our work. And that becomes harder to set boundaries if that's such a strong driver for
Yeah.
a person, you know?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
there's a little personal discovery that you have to do. In fact, I really learned that there's going to be some people in the world who really like to stay working, even though they're on vacation. That's not me now. I really feel like the world's a big place that I want to explore, and I'd really like to explore it without thinking about work when I'm exploring it. But for others, it might be that they like to do a little work on vacation, you know.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
got to get to know yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so the age of your kids can influence you, your workplace can influence you, and it's not just your workplace, it's your spouse's workplace. And I'm not going to tell the big long story here, but if anybody ever wants to hear the story about how I helped my husband think differently about vacations, the very short story is I encouraged him to have his boss have my cell number one time when we were taking a
Ah.
vacation.
Ah.
And then that meant if there was an emergency, his boss could call me. And guess what? The whole week went by and my cell number never was rung by his boss. And more importantly, it really changed my husband's opinion about vacations and how much he wasn't thinking in the middle of the day about that email he had to send.
Yeah.
Instead, he was literally sitting on the couch next to me thinking, tennis or a nap?
That would that's wonderful. And brilliant. I can put myself in the position of his boss, and yeah, I don't know that I would have wanted to make that phone call. So that really was really brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really shaped us for the future because this is the other thing that can happen for couples. Okay, so they need to think about the age of their kids. They need to think about how each of their workplaces is impacting them. Even when you get really good at this stuff, there's going to be periods of time when work is demanding or life is demanding. Maybe you're going through some elder care stuff. And so the idea of completely tuning out isn't really possible. Um, so Jeff and I've gotten really good at saying, okay, we're going to be away for a week. Is this one of those vacations where we're both completely turning off? Or do we need to adjust it slightly? And so maybe I have a big project due and I can completely turn off for 3 of the 7 days, but not all 7 days. So I think it lets couples start getting smart about in this vacation, what's the best approach?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Consciously setting limits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Together.
Together. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which gets back to some of the stuff you help couples think about. What are what are some things you've learned? I mean, really what we're saying is if couples can have good conversations, be curious,
Mhm.
they can then approach this and come up with good solutions. If
Right.
they're not able to do that, then they're going to get stuck maybe in a blaming of each other for, I always have to do all this stuff for vacation and you never do that for vacation. And
Right.
what have you learned that helps couples start to get on the same page, learn some skills to deal with challenging conversations?
I think the first thing gets back to that some of those findings from Dr. Gottman, and so this is really I would say at the heart of and anything that I ever try to do to help couples, because what he found at first sounds very pessimistic, but you have to look at it a bit differently. What he found is that if you looked at couples, and again, he studied, 3,000 plus couples, numerous studies. They're really rigorous studies. To get a license in psychology these days, you need to you need to be able to answer questions about John Gottman. I mean, his work is very well thought of. But from that research, what they found is that about 70% of any of the problems or that any couple will face are problems that they'll never, as a couple, fully solve. 70%. So let's see if I can be clear. What I mean with that is that if you think about whether a couple is miserable or you think about a couple is really happy and they have a stable long-term relationship, it's the same for misery or joy in that sense. Is that, well, there's about 70% of the problems that are going to come up for you that they're going to just remain problems in some way for you. When I first heard that as a therapist, I said, no, it can't be true. And we're in the business of trying to change things, so this just cuts against my better instincts. But the research is pretty clear, and John would say when they would videotape couples and then they'd have them come back every 4 years, and I think the longest study was 20 years, so like 5 times, he would say, we can look at those couples and ask them, have your most recent argument, and he would say, it would be pretty much the same argument. It's just that the lines on their faces would change and their clothes would change and their hair would get more gray over time, pretty much. That these problems stay stable. So then when it comes down to it is then what is the difference between, a happy couple and a miserable couple? And it really is that couples that do well are able to have dialogue. So if you can have conversations about these things that maybe you can't change so much, and you can come up with these little kind of creative compromises that aren't going to, in this case, maybe from vacation to vacation, the situation may change, but it's the same tendency. Here's somebody like me that that would have a hard time separating from work, and then here's my wife who's saying, what's up with you, be in the moment. Right. That doesn't change much, but if we talk, we can, then at least there's some movement there. We can feel like we're on the same team, and we can move forwards. I think that's, for me, that's the core of anything, that couples make.
Yeah. What you're getting at is something else we've really helped people learn about. I call it a tango. It's that argument that you get into with your partner where you're just off and running, and it feels so redundant because it's just this thing that you keep on, this tango you keep on getting into.
Right.
And so those tango, what your point is, I hear it loud and clear, is that those tangos are not just because of you and me and Jeffrey. They're because of who I am way long ago and who Jeffrey is way long ago, and how those two people interact in present moment because of these way long ago patterns. So, like, I'm a very planful, intentional person, and Jeff's a much more go with the flow person.
Right.
And sometimes that can really help us,
Right.
and sometimes it drives us crazy,
Yes.
And for me, it's like we've had to say, these are the differences that we have. We are not the same people. And we've had to kind of learn how to say, that today that strength is driving me crazy, but the other day that strength is just what was helping us, and to sort of see the both sides of that person's particular approach to life,
Exactly. And I would take it a step further. I would say research also says that most couples come together because of a complementary fit.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be, again, what you bring is something that that was very attractive to your husband early on. The classic example would be the extroverted person that chooses the introverted partner, or they choose each other. And the introverted person is just energized by this extrovert. And the extrovert looks at the introvert and says, I feel so calm around you. But as time goes by, well, then this creates one of these what we call perpetual problems. And so now you want to have everybody over at the house, and it drives me crazy, but you're a hermit, then it can get to be finger pointing.
Yes.
So
it applied to vacations. Just think about it. The introvert wants a little quiet vacation over here. The extrovert wants this very different kind of vacation over here. And unless they start getting good at kind of communication, it's all about communication, and curious. I think it's curious.
yes.
I could imagine the extrovert saying, "Hey, honey, we've got this all expense paid thing that with my workplace, and we're going to be at this great place, and everybody's going to be there." And the introvert saying, "Oh my God, you call that a vacation?"
Will you go with somebody else, you think? Yeah.
So it's being curious about all these different parts of the system and getting good at communicating. And then what happens is, you can really become team players in starting to design, because it's not like vacations happen once, right? Hopefully you have a vacation, and then you have another vacation, and then you just keep on learning as a couple what worked and didn't work. And you keep on communicating with each other about, here's, hey, that was a great vacation, honey. What did we do that really made it work well?
Yes. If I can stay with that theme of curiosity and
Mm-hmm.
things about that, and I'd like to give a suggestion to everybody. One of the other things that's been found is, if you think about it, it just sort of makes intuitive sense, is that when we first meet a partner, we're in that kind of dating mode. We tend to be asking a lot of open-ended questions, right? Which really fit with a mode of curiosity. And so we're asking kind of things like, oh, well, tell me about your family. What kind of music do you like? Oh, you like that kind of food? Oh, what other kinds of food do you like? Things like that. But as time goes by, the number of open-ended questions really tends to go down, even
Mm-hmm.
out. And we tend to ask each other much more close-ended questions like, Did you take the garbage out? Right? Like we only have so much time, and we got to get stuff done, right? So that's a real wet blanket to curiosity. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so the suggestion I have, not to spend an entire vacation like this, but one, when you talk about that that kind of vacation that may be just the couple, and or there be a part of it that is just for the couple. There's a tool, a phone app called Gottman card decks, and it has a number of virtual card decks. We use these card decks in couples workshops, the actual little card decks that they're kind of like games, and they're essentially conversation starters. And one of them is actually called open-ended questions, and it gives you a number of questions that you might choose to ask each other. So you might just like think about, just taking a portion of the vacation, or what we do is we're driving in the car, and the person that's driving can't look at the app, but the other person can kind of do that work, and you're just having a conversation instead of looking around and talking about what you see or whatever, but you're having this conversation between you.
Yeah. Actually, honestly, Mike, I looked that up when we talked last time, and I now have some of those questions so that when
Okay.
Jeffrey and I are out,
Yeah.
they're a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
actually think it's a really great idea. In fact, what you're getting at too is, yes, vacations are important, right? So I personally believe, being someone who can turn off work and fully engage with your partner or your family, whatever, it's really a very wonderful way to live life. But even on the tiniest scale, having regular couple time really helps with all of this.
Yes.
And so taking those cards out, looking at that app when you're out on a date together, I think the more you can have more joy, less stress, the
Yeah.
whole system works better. So
Yes.
yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Well, okay, so we've been talking about vacations. We're going to get to a place where I'm going to be asking you some last suggestions. It could either be some last suggestions around how to take a good vacation, some insight you've learned, or some last suggestion for one thing a couple can do to improve their ability to communicate. But for those who are listening in today, we've got some great resources for you. This has been a subject we've looked at ThirdPath for a long time. So we've got a really great handout about what can make it complicated to take a vacation, and we've got a really great handout about a checklist you can use to set yourself up for the best vacation. Mike, what are some last thoughts that you have?
Um, well, something you just said spurred a thought in my mind, and that is, there's the idea again of the of a a week or a 2 week long vacation, and getting away, and totally being out of one's element, and that's wonderful and probably necessary for mental health in this world that we live in. And at the same time, I think there's also I think a need for sort of mini vacations, and so there's an idea comes from a psychologist by the name of Bill Doherty, and the idea would be to work on developing rituals of connection, and these could be
Mm,
in the course of a day, in the course of a week, times that you get together and do things that are meaningful for short periods of time, but that you can rely on, right? That that on Saturday morning, this is what it's going to look like. On Tuesday afternoon, this is what it's going to look like. Um, Sort of cuts against the idea of the importance of spontaneity, which is a wonderful thing, and I don't want to throw a wet blanket on that. But I think the problem is, if we don't set up these kind of rituals of connection, oftentimes we never get to the spontaneous things as well. And we might even think of a vacation as a ritual of connection. We might think that this is the annual thing that we do, and this is, as you say, this is what we both want to put into it.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that idea. And it totally reminds me of every Saturday morning, Jeff and I, when we're home and available to do it, go and walk to this great bakery and we get some croissants and then we go sit in this park and we eat our croissants and drink our coffee. And when our kids were little, we would watch all the little kids playing soccer and we'd say to ourselves, should we have our kids be playing soccer instead of doing this? But our kids were over at my mother-in-law's house, sleeping over for the night, and we were like, nah, we kind of like having this time together. I guess they're not going to become superstars in soccer.
Right, exactly. Got to weigh it out, right?
But that was the ritual that we were doing for, and by the way, I think investing in your relationship with your partner is probably a really good thing to give to your kids too. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
starting back where you started, where you saw the negative impact when couples don't invest in that, it can really be hard on kids. So
Exactly.
my goodness, what a wonderful conversation we've been having, Mike. Thank you so much for these insights on, more than just how to have an enjoyable vacation, but how to really kind of create a healthy coupledom, and what you can do to really improve your skills around communication and connection. So that's beautiful. Hey, now stay tuned, and we're going to show you some of the ways you can apply these ideas when taking your third path.
Time for part 2 of our Taking Your Third Path podcast. I have the pleasure of speaking today with Karen Clark Salinas. She's a colleague, a good friend, and a third path approach expert. She's a part of our Integrated Life Advocates community, and she is a certified professional coach. We are talking today about taking your vacations. Karen's been a facilitator for our overwhelm mitigation groups, and taking your vacations is one of our hot topics. Karen, welcome.
Really glad to be here. Who doesn't love to talk about vacation?
It's a wonderful, wonderful topic. I love having you talk about this one. As I said before, as an overwhelm mitigation group facilitator, you've had experience in talking specifically about the third path approach, but I know you've got plenty of experience with taking your vacations outside of third path. So what I'm hoping that we'll be able to dive into is a little bit about your personal experience with planning and taking vacations. You can come at it from the work side first or the home side first, but I know you've got a lot of great information to share.
Thanks. I'm smiling because I don't think of myself as being a very good vacation taker. However, I've now seen where I made some missteps and how to do it differently. So I was one of those people that delayed scheduling vacation time because I was worried people would be disappointed I would be unavailable at work. Crazy in my head, because we all earn vacation time and there's a lot of really good reasons to take it. And I won't go into those specifically, but what I do want to share is that I see taking vacation time as part of your, what I'll call energy management toolkit. And energy management, as opposed to just time management, is really important to how I live my life and how I work with my clients. And so as an energy management strategy, it can be very useful after a sprint at work and you need to take some kind of break to recharge, or it's it's at the end of a very big project or a quarter or the mid-year, whatever it is. But no matter the reason you're using it as an energy management strategy, needs to be intentional. And that's where I made one of my missteps. I just wouldn't schedule it until it was the last minute. And that made it very hard on me and probably made it harder on my colleagues and my manager, because I was afraid to ask for the time. So then I did it at the last minute. So when I think about particularly uh, planning, so preparing, taking, and then following up from vacations, the first thing is to figure out what kind of recharge do you need? What will work? Is it family? Is it couple? Is it solo? What's the time that you need? Really trying to align with what you think you need and then the time it's going to take to get that recharge, that recovery. Um, the other thing after that is once you've identified the kind of time that you need, what do you need to do to take or claim that time that, again, we've all learned there's absolutely no reason why we should not take our vacation time. We've earned it. And from a well-being standpoint, we need it. And then even from a leadership standpoint or a mentoring role modeling standpoint, we have to show others that they too need to take their time. So that's the bigger frame for me at work, is figuring out what kind of time do you need? What are you trying to recharge from? And then what do you need to do to claim that time? Put in the request, get certain things lined up so that the deck is cleared, or your coworkers have a go-to person because you'll be out. Those two things I think are really important. And then from a home standpoint, aligned with what kind of recharge are you looking for? Is it family? Is it couple? Is it solo? Is to have some conversations that gets everybody on the same page about the purpose, the format, and maybe even, how do I like to anticipate the vacation once it's planned. That's kind of fun. It's the lead up to it. And then making those memories or having those experiences while you're taking vacation. And then once back, figuring out how can you savor it? How can you use photos or videos or a story to savor all that good time that you spent to recharge and restore yourself.
You just shared so many good points. I'm trying to think about where I would even like to recap what I just heard you say. But the theme that keeps coming up for us in every single podcast topic we've had around taking your third path is intentionality. So when you talked about how do you prepare at work, how do you get ready ahead of time, what will you do when you get back? And then that real planful time around what kind of vacation, what do you hope will happen, building the anticipation, enjoying afterwards. I mean, there's so many pieces there that really can make it such a dynamic experience. I loved all the things you touched on. So thank you for all of those.
You are welcome. Well, some of it, particularly the preparing for a vacation when at work, and then the follow-up or re-entry at work, I actually learned from members of the Third Path community. One of the best strategies I heard was a woman who changed her email signature maybe a week, maybe even 10 days before going on vacation. She would literally put in her email signature, I will be out, and here are the dates. If you need anything from me, please reach out to me by this date. So she was very clear, very transparent. She still was showing up for her coworkers, her customers, or clients by letting them know when she would be out of the office. I thought that was an amazing strategy. And then over my time with ThirdPath, I've heard a lot of people talk about the strategy also of adding on one more day from the time they get back from their vacation, say with their family, they add another day before needing to go back to work so that they can just kind of get everything set, whether that is just kind of manage their email box a little bit, get the laundry done and put away, have a moment. If the vacation hasn't been solo, have a moment to just kind of regroup and get all the systems back in place before needing to go back to work. And one could actually flip that a little bit. If you've taken a solo vacation, maybe you want an extra day so you can have some time to reconnect with your partner, with your kids, with your aging loved one. So it's expanding that time off so you have a transition time.
You're making me think about if a person can't actually afford an additional vacation day, say, you come back on a Saturday, you take Sunday, that's certainly a possibility if you have a Monday to Friday work week, but also that first day back. If you make sure you have no meetings scheduled for that
Yes.
first day back, you've protected that time and included in your out of office, I will be back on Tuesday, or I will return messages by Tuesday. The
Yes.
general public doesn't need to know that you're actually sitting back at your desk on Monday, right? So it does give you that time to regroup. You're
Yes.
right. We've learned so much from one another within the Third Path community, and I love that you shared that example. I hadn't heard that one before, and I am going to file that one to be sure I do use it in the future. You've also reminded me that one of the Third Path resources that Jessica and I will talk about more in our wrap up segment is that vacation pre and post checklist. Not just how are you planning for your departure, but how are you planning for your return, and what do you need to do upon return? I think that that soft landing can really make a difference to how much we can actually enjoy the vacation.
Definitely. I will also add, I was just talking with a client this morning, and he's in a leadership position. And that is where the tone gets set for what happens during the vacation. As silly as that sounds, but it is your manager, leader saying, I do not want to see you online, hear from you. I don't want you checking in. The expectation is that while you're on vacation, you have nothing to do with work.
I love that. And I do
Of
think it's
course, if there's an emergency, people know how to track people down, but everything else can wait. And the team should be set up to provide coverage for one another.
we're back at a point where we're talking again about communication, which again is super important for any work life integration success. And I think even building in the understanding that these are the 2 or 3 circumstances under which it would be great for you to contact me.
Yeah.
These are a few other circumstances under which it is not necessary. Whatever that is, it can be on hold. But I think there's something really helpful to be explicit, particularly I think if you've known that there's been some very large issue going on that happens to just have dropped in your lap just before vacation. And here we are. You did your good time management, you did your good energy management. Nonetheless, stuff hit the fan. What about that would you want to be contacted about? And where can
Right.
you just say, thanks, it's 5 days, whatever is the number of days you're going to be gone, but it's this
Right.
period of time. Let's be okay together. Let's know we're going to be okay together.
Yes. You reminded me of another strategy which people might be able to make good use of if they're willing to work with, say, AI, I might do a bit of a status update for each of my projects or whatever I'm leaving while I'm out on vacation, do an audio recording, just dump it into here's all the things that I'm thinking about, put it in, upload the transcript to AI, let AI clean it up a little bit, email it out to your manager or the team or whatever, put it on Slack, but it's there. And people are, in that way, people are kind of in your head. And I find also that a recording sometimes is so much easier because then I'm not worried about, did I write it well? Should it be bullets? Should it be a paragraph? All those things. So I just do an audio dump and then ask AI to clean it up.
I love it. I love it. So as we wrap up here, I'm wondering if there is one tidbit that you would use to guide one of your clients or anybody else who's asking you for advice.
Given the missteps and the kind of suffering I at least caused myself earlier in my career, the first thing is I would just go ahead and request the vacation. Even if you don't have specific plans, go through the steps of it's 2 weeks out, it's 6 months out. Sorry, not 2 weeks, 2 months. Go ahead and put in the request. Tell your brain, I've earned it, I deserve it, I've started planning it. And then, as I mentioned, I do find it really helpful and fun. It adds to the fun of the vacation, the anticipation, really focusing on experiences and memory making, and then figuring out how do you savor, how do you carry some of the vacation goodness back into your everyday life. So I would intentionally pay attention to each of those things, plan it out.
That's awesome. Karen, thank you so much for the time together. As I mentioned before, your coaching practice is Rebalance Wellbeing, so folks can find you there. And I look forward to connecting again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again. For those of you who are looking for some important takeaways from today's podcast, the secret ingredient for better vacations, Melissa and I are going to talk about that right now. Our guests were Mike Basta and Karen Clark Salinas. And I think what my biggest takeaway is how vacations are this kind of microcosm of this larger issue of how is your work-life balance going, you know? And so all of us can kind of stop and say, what's making it hard or less hard to take a vacation? Karen pointed out, your boss, the tone from the top. Are they really encouraging people to turn off work, or are they doing just the opposite and expecting to be able to contact you all the way through vacations? That makes a huge difference. But I think what also came up in Karen's conversation, it's not just the boss, it's also your internal mindset, you need to be clear that you're not asking a favor. This is actually a good thing for you and your workplace and your team to support people to take time to recharge, go see the world, put systems in place so that this can be done effectively for everybody on your team. And so, getting that right internal mindset is really important. So I think vacations are this great opportunity to just keep on learning about what's making it hard for me to, get the vacations that I'm reaching for, and what's making it easier and what's in your control to keep on tweaking and changing, What were some of the things that you took away from today's conversations?
Okay, so I have a big note that says just do it. That you need to just take the vacation. As you said, this is not a favor that your workplace is doing for you. This is a benefit that you have. And clearly in the conversations today, we were able to identify several ways that vacations benefit, what why should we do it? It's an important activity for us to engage in. My other big takeaway, I have a few, obviously. One was right sizing, which I think you've started to talk about already. What is the expectation around what we can do with this vacation? Am I alone? Am I with my partner? Is it the whole family? Is it a friend's trip? There's so many different types of trips. What is it you hope you're going to leave vacation with that maybe you didn't have when you started? Those were a few for me.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, that reminds me of like, what do you have control to shape? And I think that actually it's like you can keep on developing better and better. You and whoever, if you're taking a vacation with your partner, you can both develop better skills at thinking about this together, and shaping that vacation the way that you want, and then reflecting back and saying, hey, did we actually accomplish what we want? So one of the big things I've learned from vacation is, for example, Jeff and I will say, hey, at this moment for this vacation, it's going to be a little harder to disconnect. But what we can do is plan that these 3 days of this 5 day vacation, we're completely disconnecting. And so again, you might have the goal of, always disconnecting, but you can get better to think ahead about, okay, this time, this is what our goal is, and then really gently support each other to hold on to that goal. Again, with the idea that you get to the end of your vacation and you've gotten that recharge time, you've gotten that thing that was most important to you. What about you? What else? What were some other things that you took away from today's conversation?
What you just said reminded me about all of the tools that we always talk about. You learn how to take a vacation, you do your best, and coming back and retooling later is such a key to being successful this time and in the future. So what do I want to try this time that I didn't try last time? And if you're somebody who's never been able to disconnect, can you commit to like 2 hours? What could you commit to that would be some kind of a shift that might change the your ability to get from the vacation what you'd like to get from it? And it kind of leads me to, I felt like if I was tying together what we heard from Mike and what we heard from Karen, it was like the importance of disconnecting so you can connect. So putting those two pieces together, we heard a lot from Karen about how can we enable ourselves to actually disconnect from work. And what we were hearing from your conversation with Mike was a lot about the importance of vacation so you can connect. And like you and I had previously talked about, whether that's connecting as a couple or whoever you're away with. If you're away by yourself, you need to be able to connect with yourself. If it's time with your kids, being able to do that, but really giving yourself that space to practice, how do I disconnect so I can have a fulfilling connect while I'm away?
Love that. Love that. And I love the point that it's no matter who that group is that you're vacationing with, yourself, your family, your partner, there is that connection that happens because we've really stepped away from our everyday lives and into this other experience that we're going through. All right. So maybe one tip that you heard that's one of your favorite tips about vacations, just before we wrap it up, and I'll share one tip too.
Okay, before I say my tip, I have to say I'm a perfectionist and sometimes I get a little bit too stuck in what's going to be the perfect vacation. So, whether this was actually said by our guests or not, right sizing your expectations and setting the expectation that this is not going to be perfect. This is another life experience. That's great. Now, to the tip that I take away, it was that buffer period before vacation and after vacation where you can set, my last day of work. This is actually what I'm going to do. Nobody needs to know I'm still in the office, but I'm still working. And when I get back, maybe you get back and you're in the office, but again, you have scheduled 0 meetings. It's just your catch-up day. And the same thing for as a family, a parent of young children. I feel like it's really important to get back on a Saturday so we have Sunday that's just a catch-up day before everybody has to jump back into real life.
Wonderful. I love that. Yes, I think the buffers make a huge difference. One of my favorite tips, having not even just about me, but having listened to a lot of people around taking vacations, is to think if it's been challenging, to think about what's one small step you can take. I loved Karen's idea. Get it on the calendar. I remember working with somebody who the idea we came up with was, okay, block off a long weekend as a way to start. And so, it's like building a muscle, and you can keep on getting smarter and smarter about how to strengthen that muscle to get the longer vacation that you want to get to eventually. But start somewhere small, achievable, get it on the calendar, maybe even just a long weekend. And they are so wonderful when we actually are able to step away, um, disconnect to reconnect. They're just a really great experience. So, um, hey, we've got some great resources up on our website around taking a vacation. We also have a blog post that you can check out. And so there's doesn't have to stop here. There's lots more information for you to keep on taking your third path. Thanks for being here.